Hi. So, what do these hurricane uncertainty cones mean? So, you might have noticed that uncertainties and how they're defined are a major theme on this channel. Unfortunately, there are not too many places where uncertainties are explicitly displayed for the general public. But here's one. The U.S. National Hurricane Center makes track forecast cones for tropical cyclones. So they make a prediction of where the cyclone is going to go, and they include with that prediction an uncertainty cone. Now, the National Hurricane Center defines these cones in a very specific way. So let's take a look at that definition. Now, in this video, we're not going to talk about their weather modeling. We're only going to talk about the definition of their track forecast cone. And most of the information in this video is actually available from the National Hurricane Center's website, www.nhc.noaa.gov. Okay, so first, let's mention a couple of things that the track forecast cone doesn't mean. So the track forecast cone is a statement about the probable location of the center of the tropical cyclone. The cyclone can extend outside of the cone, so the cone does not define a region that will enclose the entire cyclone. Now, some might believe that the cone defines a region where the center of the cyclone can possibly be located, and that the center will definitely not go outside this region. But the cone does not define a region that is 100% likely to contain the center of the cyclone, and the cyclone's center can definitely go outside the cone. Okay, so with that, let's take a look at the track forecast cone definition. Okay, so the forecasts are shown as a series of time points. So these time points are spaced every 12 hours up to 72 hours, and then after that, every 24 hours up to 120 hours. Then circles are drawn at each time point representing the uncertainty in the track at that point. So for example, here we can see the forecast cone circle at the 120-hour time point. And we can see that the uncertainty cone is basically forming a circle around that time point. Similarly, at the 96-hour time point, we can see the same thing, just with a smaller circle. And we can also see that there's a smaller circle around the 72-hour time point. Okay. So then the cone is made by interpolating between these circles. So right now we just need to know what determines the size of those forecast cone circles. Now here's an important point. The size of the forecast cone circles is not determined for each tropical cyclone individually based on measurements of that particular cyclone. Instead, they are taken from the errors on the predictions of all tropical cyclones over the previous 5 years. Okay, so let's look at what they do for each time point along the forecast track. For concreteness, let's start with the 12-hour time point. Okay, so each historical tropical cyclone occurring in the last 5 years had a position forecast for the 12-hour time point. So let's represent that forecasted position with a black dot. Now, plot that tropical cyclone's actual position at the 12-hour time point relative to that forecast. And we're going to plot that with a red dot. So, for example, if we had a tropical cyclone that had a position at the 12-hour time point that was 9 nautical miles northeast of its forecast, we would plot a red dot like this. And as a second example, if we had a tropical cyclone that had a position 11 nautical miles northwest of its forecast, we would plot a red dot like this. Now, compile the set of points for all tropical cyclones over the last 5 years. Now, draw a circle that encloses 2/3 of those red dots. That circle defines the forecast cone circle for that time point. This process is then repeated for all of the other time points. And these forecast cone circles are then used for all tropical cyclones for the entire season. But they do this separately for the Atlantic, Eastern North Pacific, and Central North Pacific basins. So for illustration, here's a table taken from the National Hurricane Center's website of the radii of the circles that go into the track forecast cones for the tropical cyclones in the Atlantic Basin for the 2021 season. And you can see the radius for each of the time points. Okay, so let's briefly summarize. So here we looked at an example where uncertainties are presented to the public, the track forecast cones for tropical cyclones from the U.S. National Hurricane Center. Now, an important point is that the uncertainties are not determined for each tropical cyclone individually based on measurements of that cyclone. Instead, they're determined from historical forecast errors on tropical cyclones over the last 5 years. And the sizes of the uncertainties used are the same for all tropical cyclones in that basin for the entire season.